talk about a dragon and a beast out of the sea, and a second beast that rises from the land, and 666, and all kinds of fun stuff. So you're going to have get you in the spirit for Halloween today, right here at Polaris Christian Church, talking about 666. So the next time you see that reference somewhere, I think you'll have some different ideas of what that might have meant to the original readers of Revelation, maybe a little bit different than what we associate that number with today. So I do that once every sermon, where I press down and it like shoots up and seesaws on me, teeter-totters, as they're known. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my 15 minutes of Bible study and then 10 minutes or so of life application at the end. So hang with me if you're not into the historical stuff from the first half. Rejoin me for the life application stuff. And I'm going to start with Revelation 12. We're going to talk about imagery of a dragon in the book of Revelation. So this is verse 7 in Revelation 12. Now war arose in heaven. Michael? He's the archangel. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. Side note, in the book of Job, we're introduced to Satan. And he actually, in Job, is sort of on God's counsel, like they're in heaven, which is, strange. That's not typically what we associate, like Satan. But he's a part of God's counsel in heaven. And then here we see imagery as though like that's the end of that, because he's cast out of heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He's a liar. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, and accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they love not their lives even unto death, like the martyrs. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows his time is short. Now, without knowing what all of that is symbolic, versus what really happened, because Revelation kind of weaves in and out of symbolism, referencing also, though, real-life stuff, and we don't know where the symbolism begins or ends. What I do think we can tell from this passage of Scripture is that John, the author of Revelation, wants us to understand that there is a real spiritual war, a real spiritual world. This is not just natural. It goes beyond the natural, and there really is a Satan, and he has fallen angels called demons. But it seems to me like the least I take away from this is that John wants me to believe that there really are dark forces in the world, scheming, manipulating, warring between people who follow Jesus. Okay, so again, this is if you're newer to Polaris, this is not like our normal Sunday morning stuff. I don't dwell a lot on this element in Scripture, but it is there, and we'll get back to it in a little bit. I'm going to move now to more imagery in Revelation. Infamous, this is the beast. There's a beast, it's called the sea beast. There are two beasts in Revelation. The first is the sea beast, and there's tons of speculation over what the beast might be. I remember I was riding to a Browns game with someone at Polaris. This was probably 20 years ago. He has long since moved away, and he was kind of a rough around the edges, hardcore kind of guy. He said, Revelation is my life work. It's all I read. And I said, well, doesn't it kind of bother you that with all the symbolism and stuff and like trying to figure out what's what? And he's like, I figured it all out. I was like, oh, What do you think, like the beast? What's the beast? That is the EU, the European Union. He had his reasons that the European Union was the beast. I should have, like, let me read, then you'll have some context. Okay. Revelation 13. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea, with 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems. What's a diadem? Boom. Crown. Nice. 10 crowns on its horns, blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power. So the dragon, we've learned, is who? Satan. So there's your little key in the symbol. Satan gave his power, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, and for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who can fight against it?" And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. Remember that. How long? 42 months. We'll be back to that. Now, this is important because the sea beast of Revelation is very infamous in the culture. Most people believe that Revelation will happen in the future or in our lifetime, so it leads to a lot of speculation as to what it all means. And I'll talk all that through in just a moment, but I want to give to a major clue in Revelation 17. Okay, because in this chapter there's a vision of a woman riding a beast, and I'm not going to have time to get into that, but you're going to, just for context, as we read Revelation 17, not to be confused with my typo, Revelation 13. See, what I do there is I duplicate slides and then for formatting, and then every now and then I forget to change the bottom one. And so it's Revelation 17 I'm reading from. Verse 6, when I saw her, this woman was riding the beast, I marveled greatly, but an angel said to me, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to be, and it was, is, and is yet to come, from the bottomless pit and go to destruction, and the dwellers on earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, people who are far from God, who aren't connected with Jesus, they will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come." This calls for a mind with wisdom. He looks at real people, his audience in the first century, 2,000 years ago, and says, this calls for a mind of wisdom. If you have wisdom, you can figure this out. He says that to real people that lived 2,000 years ago. If you have wisdom, you can figure this out. The 7 heads are 7 mountains or hills on which the woman is seated. They are, so the 7 heads of the beast are 7 hills or mountains. They are also 7 kings, so dual meaning. 5 whom have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. Okay. That symbolism, one of the things that I want everybody to understand when you read Revelation. You were here for my first week of this 8 weeks ago. I talked about a dream, my fake dream, that I wrote about in a journal. The king has left the land, and the greatness of the land is no more, because the king has gone to a great city in the west. And when he was there, its colors were purple and yellow, and it was named after many waters. And the king was given his 4th crown. We all can say, oh, that's LeBron James. And he went to the Lakers, named after many waters. And the colors are purple and yellow, and like the land is Cleveland. It's all there. And we know. So, what I'm telling you, as much as we're convinced that this Revelation imagery was about the future, people in the ancient world would have looked at this symbolism and been like, oh, that's that. So John says, because anybody have wisdom? This requires wisdom. Now, if this language couldn't have been figured out until 2025, like let's say something happens crazy and then it's really about something in our near future, then isn't it kind of cruel? Like John's a tease. He's looking at his first century. Does anybody have wisdom? No, this was stuff he expected them to be able to figure out. So let's talk about the hills. The 7 hills, the 7 heads are 7 mountains or hills. Rome, ancient world, its nickname, literally, a city on 7 hills. So there's this beast, and there's 7 hills. And what was the greatest threat to a Christian in the first century? The Roman Empire. Like, they were on a tirade. There was massive persecution. And it's all there. And then he says that this beast of 7 heads, it represents 7 hills and 7 kings. 7 kings, 5 of them have fallen, 1 is, and the other has yet to come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. There have been 5 Caesars. Nero then was the worst, who was, and then the one yet to come, the Caesar after Nero, he only reigned for 7 months, or a little while. It's all there. It would have been clear, just like the king was LeBron in my symbolism, and everybody would have the baker bakes his brownies on a field with 10 lines, and it's all there. And it would have been all there for them. And then you get this imagery real quick. He talks about they marvel at the beast. Who is like the beast? Who can fight against the beast? Think of what Rome would have been, the Roman Empire, to people back then. There was nothing ever. When I was in elementary school, there was this kid named Mikey. And Mikey was 5 foot tall. There was no one like Mikey in Whittier Elementary School. And I remember walking out one day. I was probably in 2nd grade. I was young. And I walked out onto the blacktop for recess. And I remember it vividly. This playground ball, kickball, dodgeball, multi-purpose rubber ball, rolled up to Mikey. And Mikey grabbed it and nonchalantly kicked it. I had never seen, nor could I imagine, another human being kicking a ball as high and as far as Mikey kicked that ball. It was superhuman. Now, could 44-year-old Alex go back and kick the ball higher and further? Probably. Could 44-year-old Alex beat Mikey in arm wrestling? Probably. But to 2nd grade Alex, there was none. And so, could America today go back in time with all our forces and shock and all, put a whooping on the Roman Empire pretty quick with their spears and swords? Probably. But back then, the world had never seen any force that could conquer the way that Rome conquered. And so, of course, it seemed no one could fight against it. Who is like it? The miraculous things that this empire, okay. We saw in Revelation 13:5 that the beast, Rome, was allowed to exercise authority over God's people for how long? 42 months. In 64 AD, November, December, end of the year, Emperor Nero, who was kind of crazy, like bona fide, seriously, he started a persecution against Christians, blaming them for every problem with Rome. He started a persecution. It's written about in Christians, it's written about in Jews, it's written about in Rome history. It happened, it was a massive persecution against Christians. The Apostle Paul, the Apostle Peter, they were all killed during this time frame when Nero went just crazy hunting down Christians. The persecution
started in 64 AD at the end of the year, and went through mid-68 AD, essentially, how long? 42 months. Again, it's all there, and I get amped with this, but it's because so much money is made from so much speculation and so much, when it's all there, it's like any first century Christian would have been like, oh yeah, that's it. Like it's all there. Now, let's turn to 666, shall we? You've all seen it attached with demonic stuff, lots of speculation about what it means. I remember in my lifetime, Visa, people have taken the VISA and figured like VI is 6 and then SA is 6 is something or other. Okay, all sorts of speculation over 666, but I will now tell you what 666 means. And hopefully it will forever change any concerns you have about getting $6.60 back from your ice cream cone order. Okay, you're not going to get in a wreck on the way home because you got $6.66 in change. Here we go. This. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom, what we said. Or if John's like, hey, everybody, this calls for wisdom. It's kind of cruel if nobody can figure it out until, 2045. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. Like, he seems to me to be expecting his crowd to understand what he's talking about, right? Right. For it is the number of a man, and his number is, let's go with 666 for now. So, first of all, the number isn't 666. In the Greek language that this was originally written in, it is spelled out that the number is actually 666. So it's not 3 sixes, it is 666. And this is important. Some people speculate, well, 6 is the number of humankind, and 3 sixes is a distortion of humanity, and blah, blah. No. In the ancient world, any Jew, anyone with Hebraic roots, there's this thing that they did with names, associating numbers with names like we do with athletes. So, greatest basketball player to come out of Chicago, his number is 23. Greatest quarterback, his number is 12, and that is Tom Brady. The Antichrist number is 7, and that is Ben Roethlisberger. No, Ben Roethlisberger is a follower of Jesus, and I would never really say that. But we do this today where we associate athletes with numbers, right? Well, in the ancient world, Hebraic, Hebrew, Israelite, Jerusalem, they were numerology freaks. And their alphabet was associated with a number. Like, I have no idea what number our letter T is. Okay, and I can't do the math. 10, I can't do the quick math from a 3-letter word. But in the ancient world, they associated, in Jewish culture, they associated numbers with their Hebraic alphabet. Let me give you an example from the Bible. Matthew starts his gospel off with a genealogy. The goal of his genealogy is to link Jesus with King David. So, that's like a stated goal, and it's obvious what the genealogy is trying to do. And Matthew stacks his genealogy in numerical groups. And each stack is 14. What do you think King David's number is for his name? 14. D. The Jews didn't mess around with vowels. They wrote out just consonant. Okay, D, and that adds up to 14. So this was a common practice in Jewish thinking where somebody's name had a number associated with it. It's just what they did. It's just something that was a part of their culture. So let's take a look at Nero, the persecutor of Christians extraordinaire. And if you take Nero Caesar and write it out as the Hebrews would have, NRWNQSR, and you do the typical common practice of associating numbers with each of those letters, does anyone want to guess what that adds up to? It's not 665. It's not 667. It is exactly 666. So, if John says, does anybody have wisdom? I'm going to give you the number of a man, and you guess who it is, and it's this beast, and it's 666. It's all there. And so if you want that dream house, 666 North Lane, you can still buy it. Unless it's haunted by Nero. But that meant a real historical figure. And he was the greatest threat to Christians. And it's like, of course. And there's so much stress and things written and time spent trying to figure out. There's been entire TBN programs found trying to figure out what 666 and the beast, and it's all there. Okay, let's move on to life application. What can we do with all this? Thing number one for your everyday life. If the Bible is true enough to take serious, obviously my bias is that it is. The scriptures are clear. The authors want you and I to believe that there are real demonic forces, that there is a real Satan, devil, forces, an enemy that scheme and plot and work against us. So I'm going to read to you a few scriptures that I think show multiple authors, multiple people mentored by Jesus, including Jesus himself, that believe in a supernatural world around us, okay? So John, start with the author of Revelation. He also wrote other works. 1 John 3:8. Whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil. For the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. So for John, the devil was so real and so active that the very reason Jesus came to earth was to destroy the works of the devil. 1 Peter, this is the Apostle Peter. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. See, it seems to me when I read things like that the devil isn't just like symbolic for bad things, which is the more humanistic understanding of the devil. It seems like Peter, who spent a lot of time with Jesus, actually believed that there was a real being who really had, he had a mindset, he had a plan, he had a desire to really destroy, set back, whatever, human beings. Okay, let's look at Jesus, the book of Matthew. When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest. I have no idea what that means. But he finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. And it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first. Jesus seems to believe in evil spirits. In fact, much of his ministry, when you read the Gospels, much of his ministry is what's called deliverance, the idea of essentially exorcism. Ephesians 6:12, this is the Apostle Paul. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, authorities, powers over this present darkness against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. So if there is no Satan, if there are no demons, then the first Christians mentored by Jesus, they will way off. And I know that it can be tough to make the mental leap, especially for my intellectual friends. But there is a line of thinking central to Scriptures that says that there is personified evil, and it's active all around us, and to be taken seriously. In addition to those Scriptures, what I can tell you, and I rarely refer to this stuff, but every few years, I come across something that is obvious to me that is not of this world. I'm talking about something along the lines of possession, where somebody is somehow manifesting superhuman, weird things that have no real, normal, or logical explanation. So that's, again, I don't seek that stuff out, but I come across it enough to know that beyond just the Scriptures, there is real evidence in the world that there really is evil stuff out there. Now, John tells us in his letter, in 1 John, that we need not fear any of that. He says, greater is he, God, who is in us, when we invite the presence of Jesus in our life. Greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world, Satan. So we're not to be afraid of that. At the same time, we need to take it serious. So, I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking through 2 points of application. How do we respond? There are angels, there are demons, there's demonic, Satan, all that stuff. What should we do? This is more from just my experience in life. Got some scripture too as well, but this is my advice. Believing that these things are really at work in the world. How do we respond? What do we do? So, first thing, understand in my experience, 9,999 times out of 10,000. It does not come about from a haunted doll that spins its head. Doesn't involve projectile pea soup. Doesn't involve a coffee cup flying across the room in your head. Almost all the time, it takes place in the mind. It takes place in your thoughts, and in your emotions, in how you respond, in the kinds of things you tell yourself are true, the kinds of things you tell yourself are not true. So let me read to you from 1 Corinthians 10. Paul says, for the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine powers to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. So for Paul, this is not, you're not fighting the spiritual realm by exorcisms nearly as much as you're fighting it by noticing your thoughts and taking them captive and bringing them into alignment with the Scriptures. This is why it's so important to know the teachings of Jesus and spend time reading the Gospels. That's how we do this work in our brain. Now, ancient Christians, there's volumes and volumes and volumes in the first centuries. People mentored by the apostles who were mentored by Jesus and then on thereafter. And one of the consistent themes that you see as they return to it again and again and again is they absolutely believe that evil forces all around us worked most noticeably from altering our thoughts. And so they wrote again and again and again, notice every thought. They would tell you and me, you need to, at the top of your practice living here on this planet, notice every thought. And then you can evaluate. Does that come from God? Or does that come from our enemy? Is that true? Or is that a lie? Because in my experience, it really isn't
But you watch a teenager begin to tell himself somebody loves him and see where that leads. Or you watch somebody who has been forgiven from inviting Jesus into their life begin to tell himself, but there was spring break in 1994. Man. And you watch what that does, how that hinders their walk with God. Or you watch someone begin to believe that person, or they don't like me, or I'm not worth love, or there's no way that anybody could want to talk to me, or when you watch those lies, watch someone, I know your stories, watch Satan get a hold of someone who's been through a divorce. And I've had people come to me 15 years down the road who have been following Jesus for 15 years, doing great things for God, and say, am I going to be able to go to heaven because I was divorced? Like, you watch what the enemy can do with something like that, and it's in our minds. And so you learn to notice every thought and counter it with what's true in Scripture. For me, that's the number one thing that you're going to do, to fight against an enemy that is active. Number two comes from another very important passage of Scripture, Ephesians 4:26, and I've seen it work in my life and in the lives of others again and again and again and again and again. So number one, notice every thought. Number two, Ephesians 4:6, do not let the sun go down in your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. What are the implications there? If you let the sun go down on your anger, you will give an opportunity to the devil. Which means, make things right with people quick. Don't harbor anger for long periods of time. Make things right quickly, because it's in those blocks of time when you let things fester. Don't let things fester. Because that's where you start to see family split from family, friends from friends. Really bad things happen when there's a rift. And then we let it fester and we don't go back and make things right and have a follow-up awkward conversation of what did you mean when you said that? It felt like this. Or it frustrates me when you say that. And nobody likes to have this conversation. And so we let things fester. And that is just like Satan's playground. 3 a.m. when you got something with somebody else and you're frustrated by something, and go quickly and make things right. And so often, I still go back, and I know I talk about this a lot, but I did a sermon about going and making things right with people and having that, and he came to me, strong English accent, terminal cancer, and he said, my son's flying in from England because I called him after your sermon and talked things through with him, and so we're going to meet and reconcile. And he did just in time before he died. But he just held on to some stupid thing that probably wasn't even true or that didn't even matter, and he almost went to the grave not reconciling with his own son. So those are my two big takeaways from today, is that start to notice every thought and ask, is that true? Is that really from God? Does God want me thinking this thought, or is that from the enemy to wreck things? And then start to notice the tension in your relationships and be quick. Be quick to make things right. Don't let it fester, because that's just that. It says right there, plain as day, that is a great opportunity you are giving Satan to ruin your life by letting things fester. All right, let's